Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to Premier Podcast. Today we are going to talk about company culture in the sense of what we do as a company, what type of things we do as a company in regards to work. And then we are also going to talk about what separates us from competition when it comes to, we'll say, the knowledge aspect of not just the industry of multifamily, but also the knowledge aspect of construction and what it actually takes to, well, some of the topics will be like do a due diligence, do an actual renovation takeoff, what are digital playbooks. Those are all topics that we're going to talk about today. So thanks. Buckle your seats up, hit the like button, hit the follow button, please, if you find this stuff good, and hopefully you get something from it today.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard. Well, good afternoon, Clayton.
Good afternoon to you, Joe.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing excellent.
Yeah, business is going good.
Business is going good, yeah.
It is. We're busy.
Very busy.
And this is now September. Well, by the time these guys see it, I don't know, but it's a Sunday. I think it's September 1st or something like that.
Third, you're close.
3rd. That's right. So here we are, Sunday, September 3rd, come into the latter part of the year. So I think one of the first things that we should talk about is what is end of the year look like as a company, specifically dealing as a construction company, multifamily. What does the end of the year kind of look like?
So I would say for us in the construction division, I would say September, October, November, we're working on due diligence numbers and budgets for our clients. We're heavy now getting set up for next year. All of our clients, whether it's the regional property managers or the property managers and the construction managers for our clients, are all calling us for numbers. They need to now assemble all the budgets, all the wish list projects, put them all in the hopper, and
Yeah.
they need to decide what those budgets are so they can put it together, then make a presentation to their clients, get their clients to approve how much money they will approve for projects, and that'll come out later.
So one of the things that we do, I think, very well is we plan for the end of the year. We always come like summertime, we start thinking about, okay, the end of the year is going to be coming. We actually plan to do a number of different things. If that's a property walk, for instance, for clients, a lot of times, as we know, they're too busy to do it themselves. So they will actually have us go and walk their property to give them numbers so they can get their budgets right. A lot of times we give them qualifying numbers. We actually give them the bid or the numbers that they will use to utilize bids moving forward. Now, that doesn't mean that we always get the work from what we do, but one of the things that I think makes us great at what we do there is we do this based off of the premier way, and that is relationship, relationship, relationship. We don't charge our clients to do due diligences. We don't charge our clients to do property walks. We do that in anticipation, knowing that we have a great partnership with them. We know that the work will come. And if we get if we get some of the jobs, great. That's the whole goal of it. But we know we're not going to get all the jobs. That's just the reality of business. And I don't think really a company should give anybody all their work. Putting all your eggs in one basket isn't always a good thing.
Agreed.
Now, renovations, for instance, two parts of renovations. So the viewers and listeners out there, renovations can run yearly, meaning that they will start mid-March timeframe. They will have a set budget for how many units they want to accomplish that fiscal year. And when that money runs out, they are done for that fiscal year. And then there are renovations that are continuous, meaning that there will be a contract that would go in place for you to do a renovation, and that renovation doesn't stop. Now, typical renovations run between, let's say, 2.5 to 3.5, upwards of 4 years if you need it. But those run continuously. So when it comes to budget season on the renovation side, for instance, what we're more looking at is a little bit different than the due diligence. Now, we will do due diligences with you guys on the construction side, but with the renovations, slightly different, obviously. Why? Because there's not a lot of large capex that's involved in that. Typically, it's going to be as you know, running through, a renovation account. And then sometimes there is operational expenses behind that because the renovation portion cannot afford, to pay for the entire renovation. Maybe that's washer and dryers, maybe that's appliance packages, so on and so forth. Then it comes from the operational budget side. So part of our conversation today is, as a company at Premier, we plan, like we just talked about. We do these operational things as a company, helping our clients out. What does that look like when it comes to a due diligence for the viewers and listeners out there who have absolutely no clue? Maybe they've heard of the word due diligences. Maybe they are, a assistant property manager. Maybe they're a maintenance individual, leasing, somebody that's not actually in the operational space that controls or that oversees a due diligence and how they actually work. What is a due diligence, first off, and then how does Premier, or how do we as a company, how do we meet that need for them? Bless you.
So due diligence, or as some refer to them as a DD, full property inspection.
Yeah.
So when our clients are looking to purchase new properties, they assemble a team of professionals. They have their own in-house, generally, whether it's their fee management team or their own capital team that comes in, and they go through the books of operations, how things work. That part we're not tied to. Where we're tied to is the functionality of the building.
Okay.
From its entire, the roof top down, the roof, the siding, the windows, the asphalt, the interiors, everything, and how that property looks, how it works, everything that keeps it functional. So what we do as part of that DD is we bring a team of professionals to inspect the roofs, the decks for their, whether they're structurally sound, whether the elastomeric coatings are sound. We look at the exterior wood and building components for any rot repairs, anything needed to bring it up to a better standard.
Would that be a building envelope then, basically?
Correct. It is a building envelope inspection, as well as the asphalt, the concrete in place, everything. And there's also part of that due diligence. These clients generally want to bring value to the property. So while we're there doing these DD walks, we're also looking at anything that can be done to make the property more appealing, get higher rents, and reposition the property, which, as you said, we'll talk about that again later. So we'll give them options for whether it's a barbecue station addition, adding fire pits. We'll also put budget numbers together for remodeling their clubhouse, making it, sprucing it up. We'll walk around and look at their pool, for instance, and say, okay, how about we resurface your pool? How about we resurface your pool deck? We'll bring in a barbecue pit or a barbecue station next to the pool. Let's replace your perimeter fencing. Let's replace your pool fencing. All those items that might get old and dingy over time. When a client comes and buys this property, they're excited. I'm bringing this property, hopefully, into my portfolio.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I want to make mention to the viewers and listeners out there is a due diligence doesn't necessarily happen in this September, October, November, December timeframe. This can happen anytime during the year. What we're simply referring to right now is a lot of times at the end of the year, we do see more due diligences happen towards the end of the year because investors have a lot of money that they need to get rid of, and they're looking for properties. So we do actually, and I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but we do actually know a lot of real estate developers that are outside the multifamily industry that we work with as well on our own personal endeavors privately from Premier that are looking for deals for these large ownership groups to try to find them. So we do see more due diligences typically latter part of the year into the first quarter, maybe the second quarter of the next fiscal year, but they can happen at any time.
True.
Good. So while we do these due diligences and we're going through this process, and I'm going to shorten it now for time's sake, just calling it DD. While we do these DDs, we know that underwriters are there. So what you were mentioning is a lot of times the teams that come from an ownership group side, this wouldn't be the management side. Management would be the people who typically would manage the property that aren't a REIT or something, but it would be the actual investment side of the company will come in. And what they're looking for is they're trying to find the budgets that they're going to set to be able to, again, acquire that property. Now, part of the process for us in a DD is adding value by giving them numbers that would correlate and I'll be very slow when I say it, that correlate to what they want to spend to buy. Now, one of the questions we get asked a lot, you and I, is if a property is being bought and that property has already had maybe some renovations done, maybe it's already had a fence and a new roof and a new clubhouse, and maybe their dog park is a little bit old, but it still looks good. What is the reasoning behind somebody wanting to now do a due diligence in the sense of all these upgrades if it was just done maybe 3 years ago?
Well, there's an expression, lipstick on a pig. That's part of our jobs at Premier, is to make sure that lipstick has not just been put on such.
Yeah.
They want us to look at the systems in place. They want us to confirm what the piping, for instance, is.
Yeah.
That it's not CPVC, or if it is CPVC, what is the price going to be to
Correct.
replace all of the piping?
Yeah.
So it's not an exposure that they have to worry about floods.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that part of that goes into every person that purchases a property, no different from you guys out there listening and viewing. If you purchase a new home, there's always something that you personally want to do to it. There's a personal touch that you want to bring in. No matter if the house has been, maybe it's even new construction, you still want to put in your own, window curtains or whatever it is that maybe aren't there. Or maybe you want to put in a better dishwasher or a better washer and dryer. So in a sense, what we're really talking about here is, yes, things could be done previous, but no different than us. Everybody wants to put their own touch on it. What we simply are trying to do is we are simply trying to enhance that vision for the client by providing them the best necessary items that are cost effective, that match their budget so they can move forward with it. If there's contractors, one thing that we have learned is that if a contractor is not integratable, or a contractor is in it only for themselves, they will always choose things that will make them the most money. Let me repeat that. They will always choose things that make them the most money, and they will use that and they will sell that. Now, I'm not saying all, but what I am saying is there's a lot of people out there that are integratable, and there are a lot of people out there that are not integratable. So the main thing that I think people need to look at is that company budget conscious in the sense that they are willing to work with us? They're willing to take the extra steps it takes to meet that budget. And we'll get into that a little bit when it comes to renovations and construction projects. Actually, why don't we get into it right now since we're already on that topic?
Okay.
Some of the things that we do as a company, what do we do for our clients that help them make the best choice for them?
In part, we give them options. We use expressions good, better, and best sometimes.
Or value engineering, correct?
Value engineer, we will. We'll actually specifically, client will ask us, for instance, as part of a DD, okay, I want to do this, this, and this at my clubhouse. Well, before we spend an excessive amount of time exploring those options, we can right to the front end ask the client, okay, so we can explore those options. Tell me, please, what your budget is.
Yeah.
How much do you want to spend? Now we can value engineer that scope of work to actually match the
Now,
budget.
are we asking a client, and this is, again, viewers out there are probably like, oh, you snuck in there that you're asking a client for numbers. We ask a client specifically for numbers, not so we can work our budget necessarily backwards to get the job. We're actually trying to do that to help the client, whether they decide to go with us or not. What we call there is that apples to apples bid. If you go into a situation and you have a client that has to get 3 bids out, most of the time it's 3, sometimes it's 4 if they get a little crazy. It always has to be apples to apples. And what we've seen so many times is just people aren't I don't want to say educated enough, but they're very quick at turnaround, and they will just shoot something out. And a lot of times you're going to get 3 bids that are completely different. So if you're able to know the number, you can help a client work it backwards so everybody's on the same page. And if they are all good at what they do, you shouldn't see a huge price gap between the first and the third. At that point, it becomes, in my opinion, when I was back in the industry, becomes about relationship, credibility, and time. Can they deliver on what they say they're going to deliver in the amount of time that they say they can deliver on? And if they have a track record that shows that, then I'm probably going to go with those guys. So very good on that part. when we present bids to clients, a lot of times what we do is we will not just do the value engineering or tell them or have them work those, if we can do anything to help them and work the numbers backwards, but a lot of times we go into bids thinking, or the client thinking, this is what I want. This is what needs to happen. And what I want you to do is talk briefly on what happens when you have clients who, let's say it is a large exterior project, for instance, and that would be part of that, let's say due diligence. Let's just refer back to that, the DD. We need to get numbers for this, this, and this. This is the takeoffs for it. But then you get out there and it's something completely different. How do you educate a client on a construction director, director of construction, VP of construction who doesn't have the time to, one, do a full takeoff? So what they do is I think there's a rule. You can talk a little bit on that rule of 80-20. I don't know what the numbers are, I'm sorry. But they use a rule or something that will give them an estimate to be able to send off to get a bid for. But how do we do it differently as a company at Premier? When you do a walk like that, what do you present to the client, or what? How do you show that to them?
We'll give them what's called a rough order of magnitude. So give them a really good. Basically, we walk the property, we put together estimates of what's going to be needed, and then we will heavily recommend that they include contingencies. So a client doesn't get stuck having a number that's not an accurate number that represents what the project is.
Now, is a contingency a change order?
It is going to be a change order past-based scope. The difference is when the client in underwriting includes this 20%, it is part of their budget. So it's an expectation and it's not a surprise.
And that's what we try to avoid at all costs, is the surprises that people have received, including myself back in the day when I was in the industry. Is nobody wants surprises, and nobody wants to have to go back to an ownership group and explain why there's an XYZ amount of change order that's here that was never expected. And I think as an industry in a whole, when it comes to the construction side and the property management side, and I might get a lot of haters out there, hopefully not, is that we need to be better at communication with the ownership groups on what is a rough order of magnitude. What is the true scope takeoff? What is the potential of exterior wood rot, for instance? And I think a lot of times people are hesitant. I was at a certain point in my career hesitant to deliver that information because, one, I didn't want to look bad, and two, I knew that I may have not, I don't want to say did my job, but I may not have walked that property the way I should have walked it. I can blame it on time. I can blame it on upper management giving me too much responsibility. But ultimately, when I accepted that job, I accepted the responsibilities behind it. And so, again, whatever we can do, I think that's something we've taught our people as well, our employees, is whatever we can do to help assist that in any way possible. So it's a proper rough order of magnitude, a proper apples to apples bid. Everyone's going to be better off.
And to that note, largely what we do is that we don't take guesses at Premier.
Yeah.
We don't guess. We have pricing in place for lineal foot, square foot, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
We accurately do takeoffs. We have qualified team members, project managers, superintendents, whoever it might be that we assign these tasks. We have accurate takeoff sheets that we know exactly what we're looking at. We then present it to the client. They're able to look at it and say, okay, I see this amount. And sometimes it is the case that they say, okay, well, what needs to be done now?
Correct.
And what could we budget for 3 years, 5 years? It might be a short-term hold, for instance, which we'll talk about more later. But they make that determination of how much of that repair they want to get done to make a life cycle. Yeah. So that's where we're able to educate them on, as you said, the true scope of work, what's needed. And as part of that, we've also, many times, our clients have come to us and they'll give us a takeoff from another contractor. It won't be the pricing, but it'll be the takeoff. Well, this other contractor says this is the scope of work. And we're able to look at it and say, I have photos and documentation that it's double that. You run the risk of, if you take that scope of work to the ownership group and then you get a 200% change order,
it's not going to look well.
Client's not going to be happy with you.
Yeah.
So that's one of the areas I think we really shine in, is putting accurate takeoffs together for our scopes of work and having set pricing in place for labor and materials. So we're quickly able to give consistent numbers to our clients, and they know that our numbers don't go all over the board. They're consistent.
Yeah, yeah. Excuse me. With the construction side in order, and we will get in renovations here in a minute, but with construction side that we're focusing on right now, besides the due diligences that we do, we also do, you mentioned previously, asset repositions. Um, for the viewers, listeners out there who don't know really what are they talking about in asset reposition? You had made mention earlier. We didn't term that phrase, just for everybody. It was a phrase that was created way before us, and they call it lipstick on a pig. The idea is, how do you cover something that makes it look pretty, but underneath it's not that attractive. So when we do an asset reposition, um, what things on the construction side when it comes to an asset reposition do we look at, and what do we do there?
So you've got means and methods. Your current construction, what you'll see if you look at a property, and you might see an A or an A plus property across the street, and you might have a property that's a C property. Well, we all know in this industry that that property will never be an A plus property.
Correct, unless you tear it down and build a new one.
Unless you tear it down and build a new one. Well, the goal isn't to make it an A plus property. The goal is to get it between the two and then be able to get just below their rents. So when people are saying, okay, I'm going to look at, the potential renters, I'm looking at what my payment's going to be. Okay, I'm looking at this property across the street that's a little lower on the newness factor, but it's going to save me money and it's going to still accomplish everything I want. I have a dog. It still has a beautiful dog park because we've remodeled it. It has a beautiful countertop, or excuse me, a rooftop deck with amenities. It's got some sail shades. It's got this barbecue station, and an outdoor TV. I like this property. It's a little less than the other one. It's a little bit lower on that scale. I'm going to take this property. And that's where we really exceed for our clients, is helping them reposition the property, move it up the ladder.
And a lot of times asset repositions also, for ownership groups, it's not just about the beautification of the property. It's also name changes, right? We've seen it time and time again where you purchase a property, you go through a due diligence process, a DD process through it, then you're going to reposition this asset. They decide they want to move forward. They've gotten numbers from everybody. They know, or at least hope and understand, that those are the numbers that will be semi-accurate. Again, for us, we try to be as accurate as possible, but unless we get in the finite things of the project, you're never truly going to know. But we strive to give them the closest to what that current market condition would call for. That's another important key there, is understanding market conditions. What are construction prices? We'll get into this in a minute, but what are current prices? What is that? Because one bid that we give you one day, 3 months when you go to close, that job can be completely different in pricing 3 months later. And again, all about educating the client, all about educating our own team members to be aware of that. When we first to give initial numbers, you need to do follow-ups with your own team. Your team of our people following up on their own bids to make sure, checking the pricing to make sure that it's still consistent 3 months later. But getting back to, so they changed their name as well. Companies, a lot of times, in my experience, change their name because it's kind of this staple, right? It's the staple, the final, it's a new name change. Now, everybody who's been in the industry will probably laugh about this, is we all know, we've been to properties that there's 12, 13, 14 names behind that property. So good thing we've been in it long enough to understand that. But for the general residents, if they're new to the area or something like that, new name, new sign, everything looks, good and gravy. So beautification. Let's jump over to renovation side when it comes to this. So, excuse me, I just heavily breathe right there. It takes a deep one to think about this. So asset repositioning in renovations is a very, very intricate thing. And I think most people miss it. Most construction companies miss it. A lot of times construction companies are called in during an asset reposition to do a full property renovation. Part of that repositioning is, hey, and that would happen in the DD phase. We want to renovate this whole property. Now, we don't need numbers at the moment. We will need them eventually, but we want to make sure we close the property first, right? So depending, and we're going to get into that, short-term and long-term holds, but depending on what the client wants to do with that asset after they purchase it is all going to be dependent on what that renovation looks like. One of
True.
the things that Premier has been very good at, and that is my background in renovations, your background in construction again, is we are able to determine what the current market rate is based off of estimated cost projections. What is the current cap rates, market rates for that area? What are the current rate of returns on the investment that they want? And how much should they charge rent? That's the key word right there. How much should they charge rent to get the bump that they need to offset the renovations? So one thing that we are very good at is when we go into a reposition or we go into giving numbers after a reposition or during the reposition phase and they want to go with renovations is what we talked about earlier, VE, or value engineering the products, working backwards to fit a budget, but also understanding what is readily available. And I will repeat that again. Construction companies, you need to understand you got to know what the market currently has on the shelves. If you present a product to a management company, an ownership group, and it looks pretty on a shelf and it looks pretty in a book, you got to know that it's readily available at all times. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to get 3 months into a renovation, 2 months into a renovation, 20 units deep, and all of a sudden the light fixtures and the faucet are no longer available. The problem is you didn't anticipate that, so you never gave them a VE or value engineered product that they could fall back to as a second option. So it's a very, very precise process when it comes to Premier and how we do renovations. We never go into any renovation not doing the same thing every single time. Whether we provide all the materials, and we call that a full turnkey, or if the property is going to provide the materials, we make sure that that property is well aware that you probably want to get a second product option just in case yours run out. Well, we've been told that XYZ supply company has thousands of them, or hundreds of them at their warehouse. But what you don't understand is they're not being saved for you. They're just telling you how many they have in their warehouse. What you got to remember is everybody wants to do the same thing. If Johnny Rocket over there has this faucet, then Mary over here needs to have the same faucet because it's the going trend and it's what it looks like and it's the greatest thing and they've got these rent bumps. Everybody's pulling from the same product source. So some of the things that we've done as a company, and I won't, give too much of the sauce away, but what we've done at the company is we've been able to analyze what products are currently available, what products are steadily coming in, and then what is the most used products in the industry. So we can try to actually stay away from them and pick products that are readily available. They're not less value. They're not uglier. They're just different from the thing that everybody else wants. Well, us as a company, one of our biggest points to our clients is, why do you want to be like everybody else? If you've just changed this name, you've just changed this paint color, you've done all this work, why do you want to be like the Joneses next door? No, you are XYZ company. You are XYZ property. And we show them the add value of what that potentially could look like by a thing called the digital playbook. And one of the things that is important for us as a company is to make the viewers and the listeners out there well aware is if you've ever been on a property and you see a thing called the digital playbook and you see it has cost projections, market analysis, pictures, remember where it came from. This guy. I created it 10 years ago. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And it spread like wildfire. A lot of the clients liked it. They wanted it. Why? It gave them a quick reference point as to what they were looking for. But what it was actually created for was not just the ownership group. It was created to help the management company know how to bump the rents to get to the rate that they needed. Now, most ownership groups, and you can hit in the comments below if you think this is wrong, but most ownership groups want between 17 and 22% return. So if you can adjust numbers to get a 17 to 22% return based off of the scope of work you've created, the VE products that you have, and you can get within that dynamic or that number sequence of what they're looking for, that's a perfect storm. But you got to trust the process, and you have to trust the product. Most people don't want to trust the product. They want their own product because everybody wants to be an interior designer. So how do we avoid that? We educate as a company. We show them proof. We actually take clients to other clients' properties.
Very true.
And do property walks of our renovations and even some of our construction projects just so they can see the add value we brought to them. And we openly invite them to communicate with that competitor, if you want to call them that, of how that changed with their renovation program or a construction project, for instance, that we may do a very similar thing on. So we do that. So it helps, I think, people that are out there listening and viewing to understand as a company, there are many strategic things that we do. Now, without, again, too much sauce, technology. Technology is the forefront of the future. You've got AI. You've got AI. Basically, you've got AI everything at this point. And you can create anything. I mean, if you wanted a spouse, you could create one online. But technology is the forefront of the future. And one of the things I think that people are not grasping quick enough is how quick technology is surpassing us by. How fast it's just coming to market. So as a company, what things have we done from the inception in 2019 to where we are today? What things have we done to increase the technology base? Because we do present ourselves as a technology construction company. Why? Because basically everything we do is technology based, everything. But give the viewers, the listeners out there, a little taste of what we do in our everyday as a company to meet the need of a client by driving home a technology-centered focus, because that's what the world is asking for.
I would say one of the things that we do that people love that sets us apart is our live schedules.
Yeah.
We have live schedules that it's tech-based. Clients can go into our system, see where we're at for a schedule. All of our employees all log into our system.
Yeah.
Everyone updates their components of it that all tie together so clients can see live schedules. There's RFI systems in place, all digital. Comes over if we have questions for designers, questions for management or ownership groups. Those RFIs go through the system, and it's all kept through technology.
And I think what's really important about that is it's not a basis that says, hey, this is what separates us in this particular case. It's a basis of this is what makes us run efficiently. So, a lot of the construction companies out there, if you guys are looking for something and you just don't understand why things are, not happening the way they're supposed to happen or why communication is broken down, get with the systems that assist you. Why? Because the assistance, one, is going to save you time. It's going to save you money. And it's also going to save your employees, because a stagnant, burnt out employee is not an effective employee. And what this does is it centralizes and normalizes processes for us that are everyday, that now our teams have adapted into their everyday culture. We like to preach this at our company, but if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. If you don't utilize your calendars, I would highly recommend that you start utilizing your calendars, especially if you've got an Apple iPhone, even an Android system. Calendars are what set us apart on most things. It takes time.
Even our clients thank us on a regular basis because any communication we have with them, we'll send them a calendar invite, set up a meeting. How many times has a contractor set up a meeting with a client You go there to that meeting and the client forgot about the meeting.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just assumed that they put it in their schedule or they were going to remember. Again, one of our mottos is that we make it easy for our clients. And by doing that, we send them the calendar invite.
That's right.
So back as you said, the
And
calendar.
you've got to accept that calendar invite. That's the main
Accept,
thing. If it's not
accept
accepted,
that calendar invite.
you're following up with an email.
Set up the reminders in it. So 1 hour, 2 hours before, day before, whatever it may be, it's sending that to the client. So you're always fresh in their mind too, because
Yeah.
they're like, man, Joe Flores always sends me calendar invites,
Yeah.
pops up, tells me I'm organized. I don't miss my meetings. They'll thank you for it.
Well, hopefully yeah. I don't do that too much, not anymore, but definitely our team members. I mean, there are times, yeah, of course I do. Some of the other technology bases that we do that's important for the people out there that are interested is how important is weekly updates? How important is weekly meetings, not just as a company culture for us, but to our clients?
So we have clients that the higher level clients, whether it might be a construction manager or someone above them at a company, one of the first things they'll tell you is please answer any questions that my team member may have before they ask them.
Yeah.
Back to that note, we do that by having the weekly update meetings. So each week our teams meet together, whether it's in person, whether it's through Teams or Zoom, whatever tech driven source we use. We get these updates and we send out the updates to our clients directly so they have them. They're now armed that when that ownership group comes to that construction manager, has questions, that construction manager has all the answers generally in front of them. They're now just as educated about that project as we are, as the contractors doing the work.
And I think that goes back real quick, not to interrupt, but it goes back to the busyness and understanding the busyness of our clients, right? You can't be at all places at all times. And you have to be able to depend on a strong, confident contractor that communicates weekly with you so you can accurately, again, update those ownership groups. And, we all know that they have meetings. I came from that world. I knew every Friday I was one specific client, there was going to be 50 bullet points of what I had to go over. If the people who were doing work, and that would have been you at that time, didn't deliver what I needed, I was basically screwed because I didn't have the time to write down, jot everything. So the bullet points, the update, every week really, really helped me at that time. And I know it helps our clients now. Technology in itself is effective, but it can be bad as well. One of the things that we see a lot at our company, and we are going to be very transparent, like we said, is let me rephrase that. Technology can be misused. I don't want to say bad. Let's use misused. Whether intentional or unintentional, one of the things that we have as a company implemented is understanding and knowing that we live in a world that is vulnerable. We're not idiotic to the fact of knowing that people are people. And also, I think for me, the hardest part, it took me a while to understand, is not everybody is going to treat it the same way that Joe and Clay treat it. Why? If you don't own it, you don't treat it the same. Now, you can say all day long you do. You don't own it. You don't treat it the same. So we've implemented a lot of change recently, within probably the past year and a half, of changes that have helped our company grow, but it's also helped our employees, one, be responsible, but two, maintain credibility, right? So I won't get into the details of what we added for, that type of security. But what I will say is, again, for other construction companies out there, it's always best to err on the judgment of protection. You're not looking at your employees as villains. You're not looking at them, you're not looking down on them. You're doing it for protection, not just protection for them, but you're trying to protect the asset that you've built, the company you've built. And you have to remember that the company you've built, whether it's 4 walls or maybe you're all remote, it's still, no matter what, is its own entity. And when you are an owner, you have to protect the baby, protect the entity. It runs itself. It pays us paychecks. It pays our employees paychecks. So it's important to put in those countermeasures 100% to make sure that at all times your investment is protected. Jumping back, renovation side, the same thing goes. We have interactive schedules. Obviously, as a company, we do everything the same. We use the same basis of stuff, but renovations, again, a little bit more detailed. Why? Because there's a lot more moving parts when it comes to renovations. So one of the things that we have been very good at is understanding how we use an interactive schedule, what that interactive schedule actually does. I won't go into too much details again about the sauce of our scheduling software, but I will say that it was utilized obviously from my tech background, and we implemented some things, but we had to recreate it to premier standards. And so what we've done is we've created a system that basically is live as well, but it interacts with our clients if we need it to, but it also interacts with our subs. It interacts with our employees. We can pull it up anytime. We have centralized hubs that anybody out in the field could use. And it makes it that much more when it comes to the communication part. And I think that is vital when it comes specifically to renovations in a whole. It's a lot more communication that follows through with renovations because there's a lot of moving parts again. So having that interactive schedule is very important, but we also give clients updates every single week. So that's another freebie to the contractors out there. If you really want to make an impression on your clients, you need to update them all the time.
Consistently.
Over communication is not bad communication. It just means it's over communicated. And when they don't like it anymore, they will tell you, you don't got to communicate that much. It's better to have them say that than to have crickets. And so we've done a very good job. Our team members, I applaud them. They've done a very good job at maintaining open communication. Whether we started a renovation and that renovation stopped and they're going to pick up maybe at a later time, we still communicate with them. Why do we do that? Because it's relativity. If we are relative all the time and they're constantly seeing our emails, subconsciously, if you know every Thursday, every Tuesday, whenever the updates come out, you're anticipating something, whether you have something there or not as a renovation, they're still anticipating an update. And when the second we don't do it, even though we don't have renovations, the second we don't do it, I didn't get an update.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So making sure that you are committed to your updates, making sure that you are committed to follow through with your clients. And again, your word is your bond. So don't start something and not finish it, and don't start something and I guess that would be not finish it. Don't start something and not follow through with it. You need to follow through.
And why is that schedule so important that we meet those schedules and communicate any changes to the property, for instance?
Well, they're important because one, again, you have move-in dates again, and that's probably obviously the most important thing when you have a client or a management company that's trying to rent a unit, and you have a client that's asking a whole bunch of questions because they're out of state and they need answers themselves for investors or whatever. It's important to know when that actual move-in date is going to be. So that schedule is everything. It allows them to adjust their move-ins based off of that schedule. And if you wait too long on a schedule, or you don't schedule something on time and you don't communicate it, their expectation is going to be this move-in day. And then you're going to find yourself scrambling. And then what you're going to find yourself is somebody going to a big box brick and mortar store to pick up a part that's not intended for the renovation just to fill a void so somebody can move in. That is not okay. That doesn't show that you know what you're doing. What that means is you scramble all over the place. You're not put together. Now, are we the greatest thing since sliced bread? I would like to think so. But we have came across that many times. The key, though, is it wasn't necessarily due to our lacking. It was because the dependency was on a management company to deliver the products, and they failed to order them. So again, why is communication key? Because when you communicate, you're not just communicating with the person who was supposed to order it. You're communicating with everybody on that email chain. So you know somebody's being held accountable. Accountability in this industry is key. If I mess up, call me out. As the CEO, if I mess up, publicly call me out. Do it in a graceful manner and don't shoot me all over the internet and make me look like an idiot, because that doesn't always look well back to you. Makes you look foolish. But call me out. Why? Because if I'm not being held accountable myself, or you're not being held accountable, how are we expecting our employees to be held accountable? It starts from the top and it works its way down.
True.
So making sure those move-in dates are vital. I don't ever like pushing move-out dates. I will do whatever it takes. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes a big box store. But I will reemphasize, it is not the way to do it. The way to do it is to properly manage your project, properly order on time, getting things delivered, having somebody there to pick up the stuff. We could go on and on about that. If you guys want to hear more about renovations, what it takes to do those renovations, please hit a like, follow, put in the comments section. Hey, we want to know more about renovations. We can get into that at a later time. So we've talked about due diligence, asset repositionings, renovations, construction projects as a company. What things would you like to see at the closing time? We got a few minutes here. What things would you like to see as a company that you think would benefit us in the future as far as possibilities?
Possibilities as in what work we pursue?
Not work necessarily we pursue, but possibilities like as a company, we've talked about, I'll give you a little hint. We've talked about things like we work currently right now. For those of you that don't know, another good thing to put in your little bag of, your little bag of tricks is we work with actual designers. That one has been crucial and key. We have great designers that we work with that help us a lot on inventory control and design elements. So things like that. Is that something that you would like to see in the future at Premier, having different departments like that, not just this renovation construction? And we did we didn't have time in this episode to tap into the make ready side, but it's still something that I think was a little premature. We're going to get into that and it will be successful. We know that, but we kind of led the wagon before the horse kind of thing. I think that's the way it goes. But is there anything as a company you would like to see added in the future that you think would make us better, or even for our listeners and viewers out there that could potentially help their company?
Well, I know that the market can ebb and flow. We know there's slowdowns, there's speed up times. So key for us is that we're diversified, which we've spoken about, from the capital improvements division to the unit interior renovations division to now bringing aboard unit make readies that we'll talk about more later.
Yeah.
I would say one of the things that we've looked at is to get back into the hospitality market, which is
Correct.
one of the things that we're also adding to the mix.
That's correct.
So because we know they're very intrinsic, very much you've got to, when people move in and out of assisted living facilities or retirement homes, you still have a unit renovation.
Well, I think what we're going to do is we will talk on that subject and topic in another episode, because I do want us to get deep into what are the thoughts behind hospitality and how can companies that are out there that are looking to diversify, because they are kind of caught up in one area that they're kind of scared. They've heard this, maybe, listen, I don't ever want to speak something into existence. That's who I am as a person. But, there's this talk, and I'm not really a big news guy either, by the way, but hey, what happens if pandemic comes back and whatever, so on and so forth? There are people out there who are wanting to be diversified. They want to not just stay in this particular lane, which I do think if you master a lane, you shouldn't stay in that lane. You should learn to master something and then go on to something else. The judo master will always fall into karate. That's probably not even true, but they whatever. But being diversified is very important. It's important for you as a company and growth, but also stability reasons. Again, we don't put all our eggs in one basket.
Not at all.
I don't believe that anybody should do that. So that will be a conversation. I know I asked you, I got a little excited there, but definitely stay tuned for that, because we will get into what does diversification look like as a company, and how do you even get into those things? What does it take to get into those things? So do you think we covered enough today on what I think we gave a lot of information for sure.
Definitely did.
And if you guys need to go back and listen to this stuff, or if you got questions, again, comments about what did we, what were we talking about, due diligence, how do you do this? Do you have anything? Again, we're readily accessible. You can find us at P1 Renovations, P, the number capital one, renovations.com. You can email us. You can hit the comments. We're here. If you got questions for us, you got anything, just hit us up. You got anything else?
I'm good.
Cool. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in. Next go around, I'm not quite sure what we're going to talk about, but I have a feeling it has something to do with diversification. Maybe. So stay tuned for that. Again, make sure you hit the like, subscribe button, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much.